Hello, 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 hello. Kandana bhava bandha.
खण्डन भव बन्धन जग बन्दन वन्दित माय निरञ्जन नररूपधार निरञ्जन नररूपधार निर्गुण गुण माय मोचन आघदूषण जगभूषण चेद्घन आय ज्ञान जान विमल नयन ज्ञान जान विमल नयन वीक्षणे मोह যায় ভাষার ভাব সাগর ছিল উন্মাদ ভক্তার জান যুগল চরণ ভক্তার জান যুগল চরণ তারণ ভব রিম্ভিত যুগ ঈশ্বর জগ ঈশ্বর যোগ সাহা পান জগত তারণ চিন্তন কলি বাঞ্ছান কাম কাঞ্চন হতে নিন্দিত ইন্দ্রিয় ত্যাগে সার হে নার বার ত্যাগে সার হে নার বার দেহ পাদে নির্ভয় গাত সংশয় দৃঢ় চায় মানস নিষ্ঠা রান ভকত শরণ নিষ্ঠা রান ভকত শরণ ত্যাজি যাতে ফুলো সম্পদ তাব শ্রীপাদ ভাব পুষ্পাদ বারি যা প্রেমার পান সমুদার শান প্রেমার পান সমুদার শান জগ জান দুঃখ যায় সম্পদ তব শ্রীপদ ভব পুষ্পদ বারি যায় প্রেমার্পণ সমুদর শান প্রেমার্পণ সমুদর শান জগ জন দুঃখ যায় নমো নমো প্রভু বাক মনাতীত নমো নমো প্রভু বাক মনাতীত মন वचन काधार प्रभु मन वचन काधार ज्योतिर ज्योति उजल हृदय कंदर ज्योतिर ज्योति उजल हृदय कंदर तुमी तम भंजन हार प्रभु तुमी तम भंजन हार नमो नमो प्रभु बाक मनातीत नमो नमो प्रभु बाक मनातीत मन वचन काधार प्रभु मन वचन काधार ज्योतिर ज्योति उजल हृदय कंदर ज्योतिर ज्योति उजल हृदय कंदर तुमी तम भंजन हार प्रभु तुमी तम भंजन हार धे लंग रंग भंग बाजे अंग ठंग मृदंग धे লঙ্গ রঙ্গ ভঙ্গ বাজে অঙ্গ মৃদঙ্গ গাইছে ছন্দ ভকত বৃন্দ আরতি তোমার গাইছে ছন্দ ভকত বৃন্দ আরতি তোমার জয় জয় আরতি তোমার হর হর আরতি তোমার শিব শিব আরতি তোমার খণ্ডন ভাব বন্ধন জগ বন্দন বন্দিত মায় জয় শ্রী গুরু महाराज जी की जय। ओम ह्रीं ऋतं तमोचलो गुणजित गुणेभ्यः नाक्तां तिवां सकरुणां तव पादपद्मं मोहाङ्कुशां बहुकृतां न भजे जतोऽहं तस्मात् तमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो भक्तिर्भगश्च भजनं भवभेदकारी गच्छन्तलं सुविपुलं गमनाय तत्त्वं वक्त्रोद्धृतोऽपि हृदये न मे भाति किञ्चित् तस्मात् तमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो तेजस्तरन्ते तरसा त्वयि तृप्ता तृष्णा रागे कृते ऋतपथे त्वयि रामकृष्णे मर्तामृतं तव पदं मरणोर्विनाशं तस्मात् तमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो कृत्यं करोति कलुषं कुहकान्तकारी स्नान्तां शिवां सुविमलं तव नामो नाथ यस्मादहं त्वशरणो जगदेकगम्य तस्मात् तमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। ॐ नमो श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। ॐ नमो श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। ॐ नमो श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। ॐ सर्वमङ्गल मङ्गले शिवे सर्वार्थसाधिके शरण्ये त्र्यम्बके गौरी नारायणी नमोस्तुते। सृष्टि स्थिते विनाशानां शक्तिभूते सनातने गुणाश्रये गुणमये नारायणी नमोस्तुते। शरणागत दीनार्त परित्राण परायणे सर्वस्यार्थे हरे देवी नारायणी नमोस्तुते। जय 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 महामाई की जय। जय भगवान श्री रामकृष्ण देव की जय। जय स्वामी जी महाराज जी की जय। जय देवादिदेव महादेव की जय।
Hello, check. Hello. Namaste Yatirajaya Vivekananda Sure Satchit Sukhaswarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. So, we're talking about this lecture of Vivekananda, Real Nature of Man. And just yesterday, we had the celebrations of Shivaratri. So, there is some connection between the symbolism of Shiva and what is being talked about here. So, maybe towards somewhere during today's discussion, we'll try to say something about these parallels. Anyway, let's get back to this lecture where we were. What is there? What were we talking about? So I'll just mention something from one particular paragraph, skip one, and then come back to where we started. And when he's discussing the Atman or consciousness, this is what he says. So this infinite unit is unchangeable, immovable, absolute. And this is the real man. This particular sentence, this infinite unit is unchangeable, immovable, absolute, and this is the real man. One of Shankara's stotras, it says, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. So, what exactly does this mean? This Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. A free translation of that is given exactly in this particular sentence. This infinite unit is unchangeable. This infinite unit being the Atman. What does it mean? The essence of one's being. And here it is being traced to that aspect which is not conditioned by any limitations. So an inquiry into what one really is, where one's being is founded, leads us to this infinite. Infinite meaning that which is not bound by conceptual divisions, that for which there is no other. That is the meaning of this infinite. This infinite unit, meaning the Atman, or consciousness, or whatever is the essence of one's being. And you have the same sentences, they are called the Mahavakyas, in the various Upanishads. This particular thing, that consciousness is infinite, this simple English sentence, is really a free translation of one of the Mahavakyas, which occurs in the Kenopanishad, goes by Pragyanam Brahma. Pragya is consciousness, that by which we come to know knowledge. The principle of knowledge in each and every one of us is what is called pragya. It's that aspect of consciousness. And what is that? What is the real essence, the foundation of that pragya? That is Brahman. Which means, again, this is don't take these words as just words. Take these words as pointing to a certain fundamental idea. So Brahman is literally, it's a word. If one keeps thinking of just the word, it means really nothing. But if one goes to the root of it, Bringhanath, that which is great, big. Yeah. So this consciousness, what is the meaning of this Mahavakya? Pragyanam Brahma. It means this consciousness is all pervasive. So that consciousness which underlies all our relative existence, yeah, without any divisions, and that's what is called infinite, is exactly what Brahman is about. And where is that infinite dimension in each and every one of us? It is in our consciousness. So trying to catch hold of that, the conscious principle in each and every one of us, is exactly the same as trying to rid ourselves of our finitude, meaning losing the various limitations that we ourselves impose on ourselves. Yeah? So this particular thing, so Pragyanam Brahma can really be roughly translated as consciousness is infinite. Yeah? Brahman, from Brahman, the derived meaning we basically take is infinitude, and from consciousness, Pragya, we take the aspect of consciousness, and so that Mahavakya roughly translates to this consciousness is infinite. Yeah? And that same thing is being stated here by Vivekananda in a somewhat different way. This infinite unit, again this infinitude or Brahman, is unchangeable, immovable, absolute. And what is it? And this is the real man. So he puts the two in the opposite order. He first puts infinitude and then finally ends up by saying that is your real nature. Yeah? Again, in various Upanishads, you will have this particular statement coming up again and again. Yeah? Tattvamasi Shetaketu. In Chandogya, one of the fine Upanishads that's there. It's when you start inquiring into that which is behind this earth, behind the sun, that which is the principle guiding all these things, finally the reasons for all of this, the explanation behind any of this, one has to hunt in one's own heart. The sun appears to us as this luminous body. Yeah? What is the reality behind it? And when we start inquiring into that, where are we going to? Are we going to physically go to the sun? We'll get burnt. Yeah? So that's not what we are going to be doing. We are going to try to understand the sun in our own terms, but try to remove from our hearts various prejudices, various colorations, which prevent the understanding of the sun as the sun itself. And as a result, what is going to be happening is that the sun now becomes an internal object. See, what we keep thinking of the sun as something external. But really, is it so? When we say, look at the sun or look at this room, we think that, okay, this is stuff that is there outside. But what really are we thinking of? It is an image, firstly, literally, there is an image of this room or the sun on our eye, on our retina, and that is then manufactured into an internal concept, right? And that internal concept is what we call this room. That internal concept is what we call the sun. So really, from this particular very general point of view, there is no external. Whenever we say something is outside, what we are referring to is the internal concept in us, which corresponds to the quote-unquote outside. Yeah? Even this notion of the outside is something which assumes that I am this body and that which is going on inside this body is inside and that which is going on outside this body is outside. That really is at the basis of everything. But when we try to think of these as more fundamental concepts, then this notion of inside and this notion of outside and this notion of the body are all things that happen in our consciousness itself, in our perception itself, in our capacity to grasp knowledge and emotively respond, right? independent of that particular capacity to respond, there is no world. Which means from a purely logical, rational point of view, that which we call outside is only a convenient way of saying that this is not part and parcel of my body. That's all that it is trying to say, not very much more than that. Sure, that is not my body. That part of it is perfectly fine. But then where is it being reflected? If it was not being reflected in my consciousness, I would not be in a position to talk about it, right? So really that which is finite, which is my identification, what really is there, then at the root of my finitude, this principle of identification of my I with this particular limited physical body and mind is really what finitude is about. There's nothing wrong about it. But if the aspiration is for the infinite, if the aspiration is to address this fundamental problem which this lecture addresses, what is the fundamental problem this lecture addresses? It's essentially this: coming face to face with our mortality. As a body we were born, as a body we will die. This is a simple fact. There is no way that is going to change. But then I will cease to be is the fear that immediately comes in some form. One might try to say there's this bravado and say, oh no, I have no fear, etc., etc. But then there is some anxiety. There is some, what exactly, I mean, even this thing, what exactly happens beyond? What happens after one dies? Etc., etc. What is happening there? It's essentially this unknown and unknowable that our mind fails to penetrate. That veil which we fail to penetrate, and yet we cannot accept it as our end. Yeah? Why? Because on the other hand, just as we know that identified with this body and mind I will die, simultaneously we are aware that even after my physical death, this world is going to go on as it is. It's not going to be particularly perturbed because one particular body has changed a few chemical compositions. Yeah? So at the same time, we recognize two things. One, the mortality of the individual, and this incessant flow of all of existence when you look at it in its universal aspect. It is this conflict between the mortality of the individual and the, let me just put it in quotes, the immortality of the infinite. Yeah? Of the infinite means that which is not finite. It's precisely this conflict that we sense which gives rise to this question, what is going to happen to me after I die? What is going to happen to me after I die? I die. Finished. Problem is addressed there. But then we'll have to, the problem would be solved completely if we could find the locus of this I. Yeah? If the locus of the I is the body, then it dies. There is no way, nothing can change that. But that does not address the problem. Which means what? Which means at some level we do not identify ourselves with the body completely. And that brings us, see, the body is a name for the unconscious principle in us. It also shows us the path out of this by indicating essentially the conscious principle in all of us. Yeah? And this consciousness is exactly what this Shankara Stotra talks about. Chit Ananda Rupa Shiva Aham. That means Chidananda Rupa Shivoham. Yeah, Mano Buddhi Ahankara, that sutra, a beautiful sutra. Mano Buddhi Ahankara Chittani Nahang Nacha Shotra Juve Nacha Grana Netre Nacha Vyoma Bhumir Na Tejo Navayu Chidananda Rupa Shivoham. Yeah. So which means what? This consciousness, which I call my consciousness, is nothing but Chit Ananda. Chit is the principle of knowledge. Ananda is the principle of joy. Chidananda Rupa. It's the essence of knowledge and joy. Shivoham. That I is Shiva. Shiva is not just one individual deity. It means consciousness itself. Shiva is the name of Mangala. Yeah, Shiva literally translates as that which is blessedness. Yeah. So the essence of my existence is this blessedness. Yeah? It is not there in the Mano, Buddhi, Ahankar. It is not there in the mind. It is not there in the intellect, in the Buddhi. It is not there in this Ahankara, meaning Ahankara literally means Aham Karate iti Ahankara. That which causes the I. What is it? And in Vedanta, it's simply this Chit Jada Granthi. This consciousness identifying itself with the unconscious, this confusion between the conscious principle and the unconscious principle. This is exactly what our I is about. Sometimes we think that I am a conscious being, sometimes we think that, oh, I am feeling so, I am hurt because my body is undergoing pain, etc., etc. So our I keeps fluctuating between it keeps oscillating between the conscious principle and the unconscious principle. This has a technical name, it is called Adhyasa in Vedanta, but it's this confusion. Yeah? And all of us, this is an existential fact. So then what is the remedy? The remedy is to separate out from this the unconscious principle, which I can never identify myself with. And when we start finding the root of this I, it goes back to consciousness itself. And there it becomes Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. Yeah. That is the Shiva to which one really offers worship. Again, it's not the Shiva outside, but the Shiva within. Yeah. And there is some more meaning to this. There are some other cultural iconography that has been associated. Shiva is a symbol of knowledge. Yeah. Vairagya. So basically, if the image that of his, there is no pomp or splendor, right? The imagery is that of a person who is there wearing skulls or in a cremation ground. Why? See, these are all sort of nice symbols, but these are there is a certain profound cultural meaning that is associated with that. What is it? See, the cremation ground is typically something that we try to sort of wink at, not look at directly. Why? Because it's some kind of a symbol of death. It's a symbol of finishing off myself. Yeah? And who would like to destroy oneself? So here, on the other hand, that cremation ground is brought to a level of worship. Why? Essentially, it reminds us to take into account that, look, this body and mind with which we are having so much fun, with which we are having all our joys and woes and all our day-to-day existence, it is not going to last. This simple, brutal fact is exactly what is brought to our awareness by this worship. Essentially, the recognition that this is where I am going to land up. Whether I like it or not, however much I might try to resist, this is where I am going to be landing up. Recognizing it, accepting it, and then asking for what lies beyond. And if one asks for what lies beyond, that is exactly what that image of Shiva is supposed to signify. Consciousness is beyond. Yeah? It is essentially drawing our mind to the fact that this conflict exists in each and every one of us. There's a mortal dimension and there is this dimension which was never born and hence it is immortal. It was never born. This consciousness itself, which is there in every one of us, it undergoes change by adopting various bodies. It is as if it's manifesting through various natural phenomena. But the conscious principle itself is untouched by these plays of nature that go on in front of it. That which goes on in front is mortal, it is going to die, hence the cremation ground. That which was never born is the principle of consciousness, which is exactly this Shiva. Yeah. That is the meaning of this Shankaracharya Stotram, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham, and it goes on. Yeah. And what is it in us that makes us fail to recognize this mortality on the one hand and this essential immortality which is not touched by mortality on the other? And this brings us to the other paragraph in Vivekananda's lecture, this particular lecture. What is it? It is this clinging to our individuality. Wherein lies our individuality? As soon as somebody tells us, okay, at death, your individuality is gone. But where is that individuality? And when asked this, we really don't have a clear answer. The enquiry into this individual is essential in order to gain access to the knowledge content of the answer to this question. And this is where Vivekananda starts off. We are not individuals yet, which means basically it's a very simple statement. It sounds like a very didactic kind of thing, but essentially it means that we have not traced the root of our I yet. That's all it means. It's a statement of fact. We are not individuals yet. We are struggling towards individuality. And then he comes back to this refrain that he started off with. And that is the infinite. That is the real nature of man. He alone lives whose life is in the whole universe. And the more we concentrate our lives on limited things, the faster we go towards death. Those moments alone we live when our lives are in the universe, in others. And living this little life is death, simply death. And that is why the fear of death comes. The fear of death can only be conquered when man realizes that so long as there is one life in this universe, he is living. When he can say, I am in everything, in everybody, I am in all lives, I am the universe, then alone comes the state of fearlessness. To talk of immortality in constantly changing things is absurd. Says an old Sanskrit philosopher, it is only the spirit that is the individual, because it is infinite. No infinity can be divided. Infinity cannot be broken into pieces. It is the same one undivided unit forever. And this is the individual man, the real man. The apparent man is merely a struggle to express, to manifest this individuality which is beyond, and evolution is not in the spirit. These changes which are going on, the wicked becoming good, the animal becoming man, take them in whatever way you like, are not in the spirit. They are evolution of nature and manifestation of spirit. Suppose there is a screen hiding you from me, in which there is a small hole through which I can see some of the faces before me. Just a few faces. Now suppose the hole begins to grow larger and larger, and as it does so, more and more of the scene before me reveals itself And when at last the whole screen has disappeared, I stand face to face with you all. You did not change at all in this case. It was the whole that was evolving, and you were gradually manifesting yourselves. So it is with the Spirit. No perfection is going to be attained. You are already free and perfect. What are these ideas of religion and God and searching for the hereafter? Why does man look for a God? Why does man, in every nation, in every state of society, want a perfect ideal somewhere, either in man, in God, or elsewhere? Because that idea is within you. It was your own heart beating, and you did not know. You were mistaking it for something external. It is the God within your own self that is propelling you to seek for Him, to realize Him. After long searches here and there, in temples and in churches, in earths and in heavens, at last you come back, completing the circle from where you started to your own soul, and find that He for whom you have been seeking all over the world, for whom you have been weeping and praying in churches and temples, on whom you were looking as the mystery of all mysteries shrouded in the clouds, is nearest of the near, is your own self, the reality of your life, body, and soul. That is your own nature. Assert it, manifest it. Not to become pure, you are pure already. You are not to be perfect, you are that already. Nature is like that screen which is hiding the reality beyond. Every good thought that you think or act upon is simply tearing the veil, as it were. And the purity, the infinity, the God behind manifests itself more and more. This particular paragraph, it's in this lecture, in some sense, contains the crux and the entirely positive content of this lecture. Essentially, it says that if one tries to trace our individuality, it is in the infinitude that this little individual is trying to encapsulate. And when one tries to analyze this finitude and throws it away, one finds this infinity within oneself. This idea of a God that we are searching for outside as a cause of this external universe is nothing other than the same, in the same devotional language, that same God seated in our own hearts. It's the deepest part of our own being. And hence you have systems of thought, philosophical and religious, which do not even need a personal God. So for example, even in this, the six orthodox schools of Indian philosophy, one of which is this Sankhya. There is one version of it which is called Nirishwar Sankhya, where a personal God is not necessary. If you are devotionally inclined, go ahead, have a personal God and all the joys that come with it, no problem. Simultaneously, there is a provision for those who are more analytically inclined, and for them a personal God is not necessary. In Buddhism, there is no personal God in the core Buddhist concepts. So, for example, this Shunyavada, Kshanika Vijnanavada, the Madhyamikas. Yeah. So there again, what is it? But there has to be a process. Essentially, the mind has to be trained to focus on its own roots. That really is where this search has to be executed. This search is not outside. The search for scientific truth is also inside. The search for the truth behind our existence is also within. That is what is being emphasized here. Yeah? And in so doing, the problem that we started off with, namely the statement that this body is going to die, what is going to happen to me after that, that problem gets solved. Why? Because one recognizes that the solution really lies in our own recognizing the world to be infinite. As soon as we say that this world is infinite and it's going to go on after this body is dead and gone, at that moment we are recognizing an impersonal infinitude of our own being, which means our individual consciousness is accessing the infinite, the unconditioned at that very moment. And hence, this is why Vivekananda says this, the fear of death can only be conquered when man realizes that so long as there is one life in this universe, he is living. When he can say, I am in everything, in everybody, I am in all lives, I am the universe, then alone comes the state of fearlessness. To talk of immortality in constantly changing things is absurd. No infinity can be divided. Infinity cannot be broken into pieces. It is the same one undivided unit forever. And this is the individual man, the real man. Yeah? So the quest for the infinite, or the quest for the sum and substance of one's own being, or the quest for God, if you're devotionally inclined, it's the same search. It's nothing that is different. Yeah? It's putting it in one language or another. Putting it in devotional language calls it God. Putting it in an analytical language through Vedanta calls it Atman or Brahman. Putting it in a scientific language calls it consciousness. It's the same enquiry that is pursued. All that is needed to be done is to pursue this enquiry fully till the end. And what does that mean? Okay, fine. So there is something, some final goal that one is going towards. What do we need to do now? Just maintaining awareness of our being at every moment of our existence. Doing anything that we do with full focus, as much of our mind as possible. That's all that is required. Really nothing more. It's becoming aware of our existence at every moment through any practice, through our office, through our reading, study, sleep, etc., etc. This being aware of our existence at every moment of time is the best way to address this particular problem and recognize this infinite dimension in each and every one of us. I'll stop there. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.